Russia has officially withdrawn from negotiations to end the war against Ukraine, accused Kyiv of being unable to reach agreements, and stated that it will continue to pursue its goals by means of war. The Kremlin, through the words of the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, once again accused Kyiv of sabotaging peace negotiations and promised to continue the war. At the same time, Donald Trump stated that the United States is no longer obligated to support Ukraine. In addition, Trump said that he does not understand how Ukrainians live in Ukraine, claiming that the war will last for a long time and that Ukrainians would supposedly be better off leaving. At the same time, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, stated that there are real prospects for a peaceful settlement in the negotiation process to end Russia's war against our country, and that Ukraine and the United States have certain ideas on how to achieve this, которые еще не обсуждались. But let me remind you that just 2 weeks ago, there were insider reports that the Russians are simply looking for wording to completely withdraw from the negotiation process. My name is Alexei Pichi. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and leave any comment under this episode. In addition, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link is in the description of this video. There we post and publish breaking news as it comes in. So, the Kremlin, through the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, once again accused Kyiv of disrupting peace negotiations and promised to continue the war. Quote, "These agreements on the diplomatic settlement of the war in Ukraine, which Russia has been committed to since 2022 up to the present year, are being sabotaged specifically by the Ukrainian side. And according to the talking horse Sergei Lavrov, this is not an insult, it's a statement of fact. Russia is not going to stop military actions due to Ukraine's alleged unwillingness for peace." Another quote. President Putin has repeatedly confirmed that we are unequivocally committed to a negotiated solution. But since the Kyiv regime is not ready for this, we will achieve the goals of the special military operation on the ground, which is what is happening now. Unlike the Europeans, the United States of America is promoting the idea of recognizing the realities on the ground and transferring all of Donbas to Russia in order to eliminate the root causes of the conflict. But the most important thing that was stated by Lavrov is the claim that there is supposedly a Nazi regime in Ukraine, that Europe is trying to preserve it, and that is why Russia is withdrawing from the negotiations. Although the Kremlin is ready to negotiate on Ukraine only with the United States of America, because supposedly they are not willing to preserve the Nazi regime. That's exactly what Putin is aiming for, by the way. Remember, I've been saying this for a long time, ever since Donald Trump came to power. In all my broadcasts, I've been emphasizing the idea that Putin is trying to create a situation where he and Trump sit down together and decide the fate of Ukraine and discuss the security architecture of all of Europe without the participation of the Europeans. That's why the Kremlin always opposes Europeans joining the negotiations. But Trump, by the way, seems to think, as he recently stated, that Putin is only afraid of America. He isn't afraid of Europeans at all, and that's why he doesn't want to talk to them. No, the idea is a bit different. It's not about fear, but about meeting Trump one-on-one, convincing him only he can do this, and deciding Europe's fate together. There's also another goal. Here's a quote from Lavrov. "The Europeans definitely want to preserve the Nazi regime in Kyiv, no matter what territory is left of Ukraine, and this regime will continue its hostile anti-Russian activities. They are planning to bring some kind of stabilization forces into its territory. These will essentially be occupation forces, which will pose a threat to the Russian Federation." So, in this way, Lavrov also rejected the idea of peacekeeping. In the Kremlin, peacekeeping forces are called occupation forces. Let me remind you, there is only one occupier in Ukraine. It's unwashed, savage Russia. But those who follow the news were definitely not surprised by such a statement from Lavrov. Because back on February 28th, right on the first day of the war between the US and Iran, Bloomberg reported that Russia is considering withdrawing from the current peace talks with Ukraine involving the US if Ukraine does not agree to the territorial concessions that Moscow is demanding. And next, I'll quote Bloomberg from February 28th. According to sources, Russian officials are increasingly inclined to believe that there is no point in continuing peace talks with Ukraine under US auspices if Kyiv does not agree to withdraw its troops from the Donetsk region. This remains the main Russian demand. At the same time, it is claimed that Russia is allegedly ready to sign a draft memorandum on a peace agreement if Ukraine gives in. According to Bloomberg sources, Russia is ready to withdraw its troops from the parts of Sumy, Kharkiv and Dnipropetrovsk regions it occupies, and will also not insist on expanding control in Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions. As a result, even back then, the Kremlin stated that the negotiations in March would be of decisive importance. It is precisely based on their outcome that it will become clear whether the parties can move toward a real agreement to end the war or if the process will reach a deadlock. On the other hand, during the same period, the head of the office of the President of Ukraine, Kyrylo Budanov, stated that the negotiations, 3 rounds of which took place this year, had reached a critical point. The parties will either agree on peace or continue fighting, breaking off negotiations. As a result, the talks have been put on hold. But in addition to the Russians, President Donald Trump is also acting oddly. The day before, he stated that Washington is not obligated to help Ukraine. In his opinion, Joe Biden helped Ukraine because he was deceived. But Trump, he's the loudest of all. Although, let me remind you, Trump himself stopped all aid programs to Ukraine and only sold weapons to Ukraine. But then Trump came out with a real gem. According to him, Ukraine is thousands of miles away from the US and separated by an ocean, so it's not his war, not his weapons. And then Trump, in some strange way, decided to compare Ukraine and Lebanon. I'll quote him directly without any commentary. Trump said, "They're already used to Lebanon being bombed. People live in Ukraine too. You might think they wouldn't live there, but they do. I don't know if I would do that, but they live there, in Lebanon too, and in Ukraine." What that was, it's unclear. But when it comes to negotiations, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, still maintains some optimism. He stated that in the negotiation process to end the war with Russia, there are real prospects for a peaceful settlement. And here is his quote, "I believe that in this war of Russia against Ukraine, there are prospects for a peaceful settlement. I understand there are various factors, irritation, internal issues, wars, but nevertheless we need to understand, Ukraine wants peace. President Trump wants peace. That means we are allies in this matter, and there should be no doubt about it. We need to move toward this goal. Ukraine wants peace much more than Putin does, although Putin does everything to make it look like he wants it and Ukraine does not. These are the signals he is sending to America. This is not true and it's manipulation. America's trust in Ukraine is important for partnership. And an example of this is Kyiv's quick response to the requests of its allies in the Middle East. We need to look for options for a peace agreement every day. We need to meet with the Americans. We have a few more ideas on how we can make this war end." I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you found this episode interesting or useful, you can support our YouTube channel financially with any donation, paid subscription, or YouTube membership. How to do this? All the links and details are in the description of this video or by scanning the QR code on your screen. I will be grateful for any support. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.